The day before yesterday, Spain had a major breakthrough. So what's really behind this breakthrough? What's the reason behind it? And what kind of shockwaves might it trigger? Also, there's the case of Dr. Fauci, who refused to answer questions 111 times in the Senate. So what can Congress do about him? If Congress can't do anything about him, is there anyone else who can? Another thing is, in today's main news, the Chinese Communist Party has rolled out a new policy. And the big question is, do you still dare to go back to China? Also, this weekend, Trump is very likely to launch a large-scale strike against Iran. So what are the details of that situation? All right, welcome to Listen and Watch Fang Wei, bringing you Good Afternoon America. This is the Saturday afternoon show. All right, I wish everyone a great weekend. Have a happy weekend. Okay, let's get straight to the point now. Let me talk about a few of the main news stories I have for you today. First of all, yesterday, tens of thousands of so-called illegal African immigrants flooded into Spain, specifically into a tiny enclave in North Africa called Ceuta. At least 57 migrants died on the way, either drowned or trampled to death while trying to break through the border. Actually, this number, 57 people, is likely the minimum. According to multiple reports on August 1st, the number ranges from 57 to 67, while Al Jazeera reported at least 67 deaths. Migrants from Morocco also tried to break into another Spanish territory in North Africa called Melilla, which is a bit south of Ceuta. There, too, they clashed with the police. The mayor of Ceuta estimated the number of migrants attempting to cross at 60,000, which is about 70% of the city's total population. But yesterday, I mentioned 100,000 because I don't think the number given by the Spanish authorities is accurate. For example, when Spain announced an amnesty earlier this year, they said it would cover 500,000 people, but in reality, the number might have already reached over 1.3 million. So we can only make a rough estimate and find a middle ground here. So I think saying 60 to 100,000 is relatively accurate. And then after a large number of illegal immigrants flooded into Ceuta, it caused chaos. Many people broke into stores and looted things. Did you all see the footage from that? It was really shocking. Just rushing in to steal, and the police at the door basically did nothing. A lot of people were just wandering the streets. But the Spanish government said that they have already sent an additional 60 armed forces personnel and 30 members of the so-called National Guard. Also, along the breakwater, that is, the coastline, they have installed interception barriers. They also reached an agreement with Morocco to deport all illegal entrants, including minors. So Spain's Ministry of the Interior said that most people were quickly deported. It's estimated that by Friday night, 4,800 people had already returned to Morocco, and many of them went back voluntarily. However, this incident has indeed reignited the immigration debate in Europe and other countries. France, Italy, Finland, and Denmark have all made their positions clear, including saying they would block travel from Spain. The strongest response came from Italy. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni suspended the Schengen Free Movement Agreement with Spain, closed the sea and air borders with Spain, and even called for Spain to be expelled from the Schengen area. The reason given was that Spain has been ineffective in controlling immigration. This is seen as a direct blow to Europe's open border system. Meloni posted on X, saying, "You see these images, and once again it proves just how urgent the situation is for Europe to address illegal immigration." She went on to say, "We must defend the external borders of the Union. This isn't just the responsibility of a single country, but a shared responsibility for all of Europe." Then Meloni, together with the Danish Prime Minister, took the lead. Both of them spearheaded an initiative and managed to get a joint open letter signed by 22 out of the 27 EU member states. The letter calls on the EU to strengthen its external borders, crack down on human trafficking, improve repatriation mechanisms, and eliminate the factors that entice illegal entry. In response to the reactions from other European countries, the Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez criticized the EU's response, saying they were being very selfish, only blaming Spain but unwilling to share the burden. Let me jump in with a comment here. I just want to ask him one question. Prime Minister Sanchez, would you and your extended family, your aunts, uncles, and cousins, be willing to show such great compassion and take in these people who rushed into Ceuta from Africa? If you're willing to do that, then we'll say you practice what you preach, that your words and actions are consistent. If you're not willing, then why do you expect Spain as a country, or even all of Europe, to take them in? If you're not willing to do something yourself but want others to do it, what kind of logic is that? And besides, there are also accusations that this whole incident was orchestrated behind the scenes by the Moroccan government. There are reports that the Spanish intelligence services had already warned the Sanchez government. Apparently, the so-called coaches who encouraged people to cross the border from Morocco had come ahead of time to scout out the terrain, and they had already submitted intelligence reports. But the government ignored them. The Spanish government ignored them, and that's what led to this outcome. So as you can see, all the people rushing in are young or middle-aged men. So what exactly is going on? Is this being manipulated behind the scenes by the Moroccan government? So is it or not? We'll talk about that in a bit. Let's first talk a little about the history of this place. How did Ceuta become a Spanish enclave in North Africa? Because it really is on the southern side of the Strait of Gibraltar, this part of North Africa. This is a piece of history known as a crossing, a fascinating story where it first belonged to Portugal and eventually ended up in Spanish hands. Ceuta is located on the African side of the Strait of Gibraltar, facing Spain across the water. It controls the passage between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. We all know that this passage has always been a strategic location since ancient times, and its name is the Strait of Gibraltar. Alright, so this place, Ceuta, was successively occupied by the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians. During the Roman era, because there were 7 hills nearby, it was called the Seven Brothers. Aladdin Gate's 7 brothers? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it either. Septum fratres? So the name Ceuta actually evolved from the word septum. Afterward, it was occupied by the Arabs and then later came under Spanish control. The pronunciation changed with each language, and after all these transformations, septum eventually became what we now call Ceuta. So after the Carthaginians, it was occupied by the Romans, specifically the Byzantines, and then ruled by the Visigoths. For several centuries after that, it was under the control of various Arab dynasties, making it an important port city in the Islamic world. Now, moving forward to the year 1415, at that time, 1415 marked a turning point for Ceuta, coming under European rule. In this year, it was the Portuguese king named João I. In that year, he launched the Age of Discovery in Europe. It started with this Portuguese king who sailed around the Cape of Good Hope at the tip of Africa and all the way to Asia. This was the beginning of the Age of Discovery. So in that same year, he led his troops across the sea and captured Ceuta. From then on, Ceuta became a territory of Portugal, serving as a bridgehead for Portugal in North Africa. Then, 160 years later, in 1580, at that time, the Portuguese royal family had no sons, so King Philip II of Spain inherited the Portuguese throne. The two countries then entered what was called the so-called Iberian Union. As everyone knows, the place where Portugal and Spain are located is called the Iberian Peninsula, so it became the Iberian Union because the two countries had a particularly good relationship. Alright, so your king can be mine too. Let's just have a united kingdom. So Portugal and Spain served under the same monarch. They did this for 60 years. Ceuta, as a Portuguese territory, naturally also came under this so-called joint monarchy. Then, after these 60 years, in 1640, the two countries followed the saying, what is long united must divide, and what is long divided must unite. So what happened? Portugal launched the Restoration War to break away and gain independence from Spain. During this war, the residents and garrison of Ceuta identified even more strongly with the Spanish royal family, and they were unwilling to return to Portugal along with Portuguese independence. So, in 1668, Portugal and Spain officially signed the Treaty of Lisbon, and Portugal formally ceded Ceuta to Spain. So from that point on, Ceuta legally became Spanish territory. For more than 300 years, it has always been ruled by Spain, becoming its enclave in North Africa. The name is also quite interesting, from being called Seven Hills to now being called Ceuta. In Chinese, Shuda sounds like don't come. Shuda literally means don't come, right? So in a way, the meaning today is actually pretty accurate, isn't it? But anyway, moving forward to 1995, the Spanish government granted Ceuta the status of an autonomous city. First of all, it remains an inseparable part of our country, Spain, and along with it, there's another Spanish exclave to the south called Melilla, which is a bit larger and located a bit further south. The local residents there are also Spanish citizens. So you use the euro and are part of the European Union, but you do have a certain degree of autonomy. So who's not happy about this? The ones who aren't happy are the countries surrounding Ceuta and Melilla, namely Morocco. So Morocco has always claimed Ceuta and Melilla, saying they belong to them, that they're occupied territories in North Africa. Their situation is kind of like a reverse Gibraltar. We all know about the Strait of Gibraltar. Although it's on the southern side of Spain, it's actually British territory, a British overseas territory. The UK has never given up Gibraltar. So, in the north, even though Spain is on the northern side of the Strait of Gibraltar, the area near the town of Gibraltar is actually British territory. What about the south? Well, even though the country to the south is called Morocco, there's actually an area near this place that doesn't belong to Morocco. It belongs to Spain. That's the situation. So basically, Spain refuses to negotiate, saying, "This has been ours for a long time already. What is there to talk about? There's nothing to discuss." So this is why, whenever there's a sensitive moment like an immigration crisis, the issue of Ceuta's ownership and its relationship with Morocco comes up again. Some people are even saying this time that the Moroccan government is stirring things up behind the scenes. They're the ones behind it. With so many young people making a rush like this, is there a government pulling the strings in the background? I don't know what you think about that. Well, right now, of course, we don't know. We don't know at the moment, but I don't think it's necessarily the case, because with this kind of border rush, who ends up looking the most embarrassed? Without a doubt, the most embarrassed party is also Morocco. Both Spain and Morocco have lost face, right? This is a huge embarrassment because so many people are being interviewed there and they're all asking, why are you trying to cross the border? Because now all the reporters have gone over there. A lot of people are saying, oh, I heard the border's open now. Well, I can't find any job opportunities here. I've worked hard and studied for 14 years, but I still can't find any work and the pay is barely anything, so I just rushed across. In short, Morocco is also really embarrassed by this, so was it really orchestrated by them? Not necessarily. At the same time, last night, Friday night, the Moroccan police used tear gas and water cannons at the border to disperse the crowd, pushing back those who were still trying to rush across. So Morocco is presenting itself as cooperating and maintaining control, so it's still hard to say if they're really the ones stirring things up behind the scenes. Of course, the general consensus is still that human smuggling groups, or so-called trafficking organizations, are the ones stirring things up behind the scenes. Just like I mentioned yesterday, when the land route is blocked but the sea route is open, they urge everyone to rush the border, so a lot of people end up making a run for it. So that's basically the situation. Anyway, all in all, it's actually a pretty interesting situation. So what do you think about this situation? Let's keep watching and see how things develop from here. This incident hasn't just shaken Europe, it's really forcing Europe to reflect on what's going on with its border policies. Yeah, alright, let's stop here for now. Next, let's talk about Dr. Fauci and what's been going on with him lately. Alright, before we get into that, let me quickly share something with everyone, a product that's great for daily wellness. I'll just mention it briefly. It's Ginex's American Ginseng Black Paste. You know, as we reach middle age, our bodies gradually start to change. In Chinese medicine, qi deficiency and essence depletion means you lack energy and essential body fluids. Have you felt this? You tire easily, feeling drained by the afternoon, with a constant dry mouth. Some people, despite being exhausted, can't sleep well. They toss and turn or wake easily. In TCM, this is called insufficient qi and blood. Your body doesn't need harsh treatments now, but rather gentle nourishment to restore your health. That's why I, Fang Wei, recommend this GNX American Ginseng Black Paste to you. It uses high-quality American ginseng, which is extracted at low temperatures over a long period, allowing its essence to be slowly infused into the paste. In traditional wellness practices, American ginseng is used to nourish qi and replenish yin, generate body fluids, and moisten dryness. Its main feature is that it replenishes without causing internal heat, nourishes without being greasy, making it especially suitable for people who are busy at work, easily fatigued, lack energy, or need gradual daily nourishment. So, with the launch of this black ginseng paste, we've received a lot of genuine feedback from our viewers. Of course, maintaining good health isn't something that happens overnight. Daily wellness relies on being gentle and, most importantly, on consistency. With this black ginseng paste, just one small daily spoonful works directly or dissolved in warm water. Take it when you wake up or during afternoon slumps for convenience. The results are clear. When driving, I skip energy drinks and just take a spoonful to stay refreshed. Alright, if you order now and enter my promo code FANGWEI, you can enjoy a 15% discount. If you're interested, just click the link below the video to visit the official website for more details. Okay, now let's get back to today's news. So here's what happened. Dr. Anthony Fauci, during the Senate hearing on Wednesday, invoked the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution 111th time. My goodness. He refused to answer, didn't respond to anything. So now this has led to two consequences. The first consequence is a charge of contempt of Congress. So a federal senator named Rand Paul has already announced the initiation of congressional procedures to have Fauci prosecuted for this. But as I mentioned to everyone yesterday, even though they're taking action, it's actually very difficult to convict him because it has to go through two places, 5 hurdles, you know? What are the 2 places? One is the Senate and the other is the court. What are the 5 hurdles? The 5 hurdles mean that in the Senate, you have to get through the Senate committee, which is the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and you need a majority to pass. Then it has to pass the full Senate. That's the first chamber. On the court side, the Department of Justice has to be willing to prosecute because you can't just assume the DOJ will definitely bring charges. If they don't think they can win, they might not prosecute, you know? So the Department of Justice has to bring charges, then the grand jury has to be willing to indict, and finally, the trial jury has to find the person guilty. So it's really tough. It's honestly very hard to get through all that. You know, even if you can get it through the Senate committee, it usually can't make it through the full Senate. Why is that? Because you just can't get a majority. That's the bottom line. So because this is called contempt of Congress, right? If the Senate can't convict you, then the Department of Justice simply can't bring charges. Some viewers have asked me, well, what about Bannon and Navarro, right? Weren't they both jailed for contempt of Congress? Weren't they sentenced to jail? So why isn't Fauci facing the same thing? There are 2 reasons. First, Bannon and Navarro were facing contempt of Congress charges from the House of Representatives. Back then, in 2021, the House was controlled by the Democrats. They had a simple majority, so they could pass it. Okay. But when it comes to Fauci, it would have to pass in the Senate. The Senate has the filibuster, so even if all 53 Republican senators wanted to vote together, they might not all do it. Even getting 50 votes is not guaranteed. Plus, with the filibuster, you need 60 votes, which is even more impossible. So because of that, there's just no way. It's not going to happen. That's the first reason. The second point is that Bannon and Navarro made it clear they just wouldn't show up. If you subpoena them, they simply refuse to go. So in court, it's very easy for them to be found guilty for that. But Fauci actually went, he showed up, sat there, and invoked the 5th Amendment. So he could say, look, I have the 5th Amendment to protect me. I have my reasons. In this case, even if it gets past the Senate and goes to court, it still might not win. Does everyone understand what I mean? Because of this situation, one is the House and the other is, well, those two were very determined. The reason they acted that way was because they were basically saying, I'm ready to go to jail, so I'm not even going to show up. So if Congress subpoenas you and you just don't show up, then it's very easy for them to say you've committed contempt of Congress. You really don't have much of a defense in that situation. So that's the reason for this. All right, so you can't just apply this situation to Fauci as is. But what is the other impact of this? As I just mentioned, the first is the charge of contempt of Congress, which is a way to go after him, but the chances of success are very slim. The second is that even though he has a federal pardon from Biden, this protective umbrella, now several states in the US are saying they want to hold him accountable in their own states. Why is that? Because the presidential pardon can't cover this. All right, so now at least 2 states, Florida and Alabama, have already decided, well, not decided, but expressed their intention to prosecute him, because making such a statement and actually filing charges can't happen on the same day. In the US, prosecuting someone's taken very seriously. You have to do a lot of case file research first. But the question here is whether states can actually prosecute Fauci. They can, but there are limitations. What can't states do? They can't use state law to punish federal officials for lawfully carrying out their federal duties. Because the Constitution has what's called the Supremacy Clause, Lex Supera, in Article 6, which clearly states that federal law is above state law. So if someone is acting according to federal government rules, for example, working at the National Institutes of Health, and in doing so offends a particular state, there's no liability for that. States can't challenge federal officials for carrying out their lawful duties. However, if a state has evidence that the official committed a crime outside the scope of their official duties, then the state can prosecute them. That's basically what it means. So right now, there are already 2 states, and probably more than just 2, that are starting to bring lawsuits against Fauci at the state level. And these lawsuits will definitely involve criminal charges. Yes, there are criminal prosecutions, not civil lawsuits. In addition, the latest news is that a Republican congressman from Georgia named McCormick, Rich McCormick, has introduced a bill called the Stop the Swamp Act. He said that anyone who refuses to answer questions in Congress or is convicted of perjury will be permanently banned from working for the federal government. So Congressman McCormick said, you can choose to remain silent, that's your right, but we can fire you, the government can fire you, and you'll never be able to work for the government or even enter a government building again. That's what it means. Well, as for this matter, we'll just have to wait and see. Of course, a bill like this has to pass the House, and then it still needs to pass the Senate, right? Then the president has to sign it in the end, so it actually takes quite a long time. So, as you all know, the separation of powers in the United States makes it hard to do bad things, but it's also hard to do good things. That's just how it is. Whether you agree with it or not, this is the American system. After all, it's been running for 250 years up to now. 250 years! So at the very least, the United States is still the most powerful country in the world today, right? The US hasn't declined halfway yet, so that's the situation in America. All right, I'll pause here for a moment and take a look. So let me tell everyone, under our YouTube videos, there's something called Super Chat. Super Chat means there's a $sign below, Super Chat and Super Thanks. That's Super Chat, and there's also something called Super Sticker. So if you're a viewer, you can use those features there. Today, since it's the weekend, let's give it a try. Let's see if we can get 5 Super Chats today. If we get 5 Super Chats, it's like a tip, right? The reason for tipping is, how should I put it? It's a very clear show of support for Fangwei's program, or for us independent media creators, it's really encouraging. So if we can get 5 Super Chats today, I promise I will definitely read your message out loud on the show, right here in today's program. At the same time, if we reach 5, we'll give away 5 memberships to Fangwei's members-only website, what should I call it, this privilege, through a raffle to 5 viewers. So if you send a super chat, not only are you supporting and encouraging Fangwei, but you're also helping out all the viewers. Well, all the viewers who leave messages, because you might win a free membership through the raffle. How does that sound? So should we give it a try, everyone? Because usually when I do the show, I don't look at the messages. Later, my channel manager reminded me, you need to check the messages. Since you're doing a live stream, you should, right here, you need to check the messages directly. Don't wait until the very last minute to look at them. Alright? Okay, so anyway, if you want to leave a message, join the raffle, or access the member site, you need to register for a YouTube account. Then, just subscribe to Fangwei, and that's it. Alright, should we give it a try? Is there anyone in the audience who wants to be the first to try it out, to be a pioneer? Oh, looks like someone already did. Wow, really? Okay, so now it's 20 minutes in. Within the next 20 minutes, we need within 17 minutes, we need 5 super chats. Let's see if we can hit that goal, alright? At the same time, if there are any viewers who haven't subscribed yet, you can go ahead and subscribe now. Take this opportunity to do it. Alright, everyone can take a look and try it out. If you're not sure how it works, I'll explain it in detail another time. But if you figure it out, we can give away 5 memberships today, as a raffle for memberships. Alright, let's keep going with our discussion now. Today's biggest headline is, the CCP has put an extra lock on the country's gates. Do you still dare to go back to China? What's going on, then? The Chinese Communist government just announced a new set of regulations called the Exit and Entry Administration Regulations. It hasn't announced the closure of airports, nor has it announced the closure of customs, and it hasn't confiscated everyone's passports. But what it has done is turn the power to prevent anyone from leaving China into an official tool that can be used at any time, or to put it more simply, a weapon. Alright, so this regulation has just been introduced. When does it go into effect? It takes effect on September 15th, which means there are only 45 days from now until then. So everyone, listen carefully, because this is extremely important for many people. Chinese people who have left mainland China often need to return home. Okay, so this is related to all of us. I won't read through every single point, since my show isn't meant to cover this topic in exhaustive detail, but I'll highlight the main points. You can look up more information online. First of all, let me get straight to the point. The scariest thing about the Chinese Communist Party isn't that they don't let people from outside come in, but that they don't let people inside leave, or don't let those who have already returned leave again. To start with, they call this entry and exit, and the authority for this has been delegated down to the provincial level, meaning the province where you are, and also to the relevant industry authorities, depending on which industry you're in. So there's been a major decentralization of power. So what can they actually do with this? When you're trying to leave the country, they can use various reasons to persuade you not to go abroad, supposedly for your own safety, for the sake of the country. Of course, they put it very politely and call it persuasion. What's persuasion? It's just not letting you leave unless you agree. First, they persuade you not to go abroad. They decide where you can go, regardless of safety. As adults, shouldn't we make that judgment for ourselves? First, we judge for ourselves. Second, if you want to go abroad, you have to clearly explain your reasons. We can investigate, we can be suspicious, we can choose not to believe you, we can check your electronic data, check your phone, we can check anything, and in the end, we decide whether you can leave or not. That's the second point. Now, the third point, if you've ever triggered or violated administrative detention, basically if you have any kind of record, then in order to prevent illegal activity, you can be banned from leaving the country for anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. That's the third point. As for how exactly this prevention works, you've already served your administrative detention and been released, right? But then, on what basis do they say they need to prevent you from committing illegal acts? How exactly is this prevention carried out? What are the specific rules or standards? None of that is explained. Basically, when it comes to leaving the country, decisions can be made by the central government or even just your province. They can decide whether to let you go or not, and they can block you for anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. Alright, another thing is that if a Chinese citizen is considered to have engaged in activities abroad that endanger national security or interests, after returning to China, the provincial government where they live can decide to prohibit them from leaving the country for 6 months to 3 years. Now, how do they define engaging in activities that endanger national security and interests? For example, if you participate in anti-communist party protests overseas, or if you criticize the Chinese government online, all of that could become a trap for you when you return to China. And fifth, if you are a tech professional or possess information related to national security, if the knowledge you have poses a threat to national security, they can also prevent you from leaving the country. Okay, so then sixth, who has the authority? Previously, the rule was that only the state council had this power. Now, from top to bottom, including Chinese embassies and consulates overseas, all of them can make the decision to stop you from leaving. They all have this authority now, as the power has been greatly decentralized. Seventh, it says that if they don't let you leave, they have to give you written notice and tell you the reason. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? At the very least, I'm someone who understands what's going on. But then they add a line, if it concerns national security, they don't have to tell you. Oh my God. First of all, what counts as affecting national security? They won't even explain that, right? So in this kind of situation, they just don't have to tell you. To put it bluntly, it means if they think you can't leave, then you just can't leave. As for who's stopping you or why you're being stopped, you have no right to know at all. That's the scariest part. So number 8 is that any agency or immigration consultant helping you go abroad has to check if you have any issues. They basically become accomplices of the government or even government informants. Some people say, well, all the things you're talking about are just people the CCP is afraid of, right? As for me, what do they call it again? First, I'm not a dissident. Second, I'm not a government official. Third, I'm not in the military. Fourth, I'm not an entrepreneur. And fifth, I'm not an AI or chip expert. I don't have any of those. Would they even care about me? I should be safe. But let me ask everyone, have you ever participated in protests about unfinished buildings, financial scandals, unpaid wages, or property management rights? Have you ever made sarcastic comments because of floods or disasters, posted articles online, or criticized local governments? Not the central government, but local ones? Have you ever forwarded videos or articles on WeChat that were later deleted? Have any of your posts ever been deleted? Have you ever had your account suspended? Have you ever been called in by the police for a talk? Have your spouse, parents, or children ever been involved in any economic or criminal cases? All of these can become reasons for you to be implicated. These are what we call reasons. So this is what comes with the new rules for entry and exit. So even if you're not anti-party, you haven't supported the US, you're not a high-tech professional, you're nothing special, have you ever had any civil disputes? Have your interests ever conflicted with those of the party or the government? Did you ever say anything questionable during those conflicts? Any of these could become a reason why you might not be allowed to leave. So this really is like a sword hanging over everyone's head. It's become that kind of situation, especially for our Chinese friends overseas. You're living abroad, you're very free, right? Even just watching this program, isn't that so? If you leave a comment online, could that also get you caught up in this situation? All right, let me tell everyone a bit about how things are here in the US. When it comes to entering and leaving the US, well, for leaving, there's no review process, no border checks, and no one asks you why you're leaving. But when you come in, they'll ask questions. When you leave, they won't. That's because it has nothing to do with the government. It's none of the government's business. In the US, if you're penalized, first, you know who did it, and second, you can appeal. There's always a way to appeal. You definitely have these two rights. Okay, but in China, you don't. As I mentioned earlier, none of these penalties are connected to the courts. Of course, the courts just listen to the party anyway, so even if they were connected, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't help. But right now, what we know is that the courts can't do anything either. You just can't take it to court. That's the situation. It never even gets to the courts. Administrative agencies, including your province, can just penalize you at will and make it so you can't get away. So in the future, even if you say you're just going back to visit family or handle some property, it could still become a risk. That's what it's come to. Wonder how everyone feels about this. If you have any thoughts, could you leave a comment? We've just activated our super chat. Super chat? Has anyone? Oh, not yet? Maybe people don't know how to use it or something. Just so you know, super chat makes your message really stand out. Everyone can see your comment, and so can Fang Wei. I'll definitely respond to your message if you use it. Or if you want to express an opinion, I'll definitely read it out loud, okay? Looks like we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anyone who can support us through super chat or super sticker? All right, so there's this Chinese internet celebrity, a web influencer named Li Chengpeng. Li Chengpeng used to be a sports journalist. His writing is really good. I really admire him. He posted a tweet. Let me read it to everyone. He said, the new entry and exit management regulations basically mean the expansion, legalization, and normalization of border control. They can now directly detain you at customs without telling you the reason. In the past 2 months, first they restricted capital outflow, then they restricted technology outflow, and now they're going after overseas income taxes. Now, even movement is restricted. Whether it's money or people, they're trapped inside, and all you hear are endless shouts, demanding your gun for your life. It should be to hand over your money and you won't be killed, right? Yeah, exactly. So honestly, I don't know what you think about this. You're welcome to leave a comment, especially viewers from mainland China. What are your thoughts? Or if you're overseas and might be returning to mainland China, many of our viewers are in that situation. Does this issue worry you? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, or maybe you're not sure. Let's do a poll and see how everyone feels about this issue and what kind of impact it has on you. All right, then, let's take a look at this next topic. For the first time in history, Trump opens Camp David to the media. Yesterday, I told everyone the story of Camp David. President Trump held a cabinet meeting at Camp David on Friday, which was the first time since he took office. It was also the first time he opened this so-called mysterious presidential retreat, Camp David, to the media. Camp David has long been considered one of the most mysterious presidential facilities in the United States, and in the past it was almost never open to the media. This time, for the first time in history, it's just like the White House. They allowed reporters in. While we're having our meeting here, you can sit over there in the room and ask us questions. It's also the first time cameras have been allowed into Camp David to film a cabinet meeting. Let me share with you the main points from this cabinet meeting. First, Trump said that Iran is currently in a difficult situation. Its military capabilities have been greatly weakened, and a large number of missiles have been destroyed, although some still remain. But compared to 4 or 5 months ago, there are far fewer now, and their production capacity has almost completely disappeared. Second, President Trump said that Iran is unpredictable, distorts the facts, and doesn't keep its word, which makes him very angry. He said, "They always make me angry." Okay, so third, this is my own summary, not something Trump said. It's that the United States and Israel are planning the largest airstrike on Iran's energy facilities since the start of the conflict. The earliest it could begin is this weekend, or an order could even be given within a few hours, and the operation could last for several days. In response, the Pentagon's chief spokesperson, Parnell, said that before President Trump makes a final decision, the Department of Defense will not comment on any potential targets. Basically, we can't say anything. Meanwhile, CBS reported that the United States and Israel are already prepared to launch a precision bombing operation against Iran's energy facilities. Another online report from a journalist says that within the next 12 to 36 hours, the U.S. military, together with Israel's Air Force and Space Force, will launch a week-long operation aimed at striking and destroying the tunnel entrances to missile launch bases inside Iran that are operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' Aerospace Force. The goal is to weaken the missile launch capabilities of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. At the same time, multiple Iranian energy infrastructure sites and power plants will also be targeted in these strikes. Okay. Meanwhile, the United States is also controlling Iran's maritime transportation. The U.S. military stated that as of last night, they had already forced 30 Iranian commercial ships to change course, destroyed 2 ships, boarded and searched 2 others, and allowed nearly 30 ships carrying humanitarian aid supplies to pass. So it's not like they're controlling everything. If your actions don't help the war effort, don't pose a threat to the Gulf countries or the U.S. military, and are purely to help the Iranian people, then the U.S. military will let you pass. At the same time, the United States is also stepping up its financial sanctions against Iran. At the same time, the State Department announced a reward of up to $15 million for information that can help dismantle the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' drone production network. They also specifically named an Iranian company that supplies parts to the Quds force of the Revolutionary Guard, as well as 6 Iranian officials who have been sanctioned by the United States. All right, at the same time, President Trump said at Camp David that the U.S. and Israel have reached an agreement to push for the complete disarmament of Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups. Trump said that the United States has not yet agreed. In regard to Ukraine, President Trump said the U.S. has not yet agreed to allow Ukraine to produce Patriot missiles on its own. He emphasized that this kind of advanced military technology cannot be easily transferred to other countries. So, what's going on here? Wasn't this promised long ago? What was it called last time? Regarding that NATO's summit agreement, it actually wasn't settled yet. Here's the background. Russia launched 2 major attacks on Kyiv this week, with one of them happening 3 days ago. So they fired a lot of cruise missiles. Now when Russia attacks Ukraine, they use cruise missiles. Oh, that was a mistake. Sorry, I said it wrong. Ballistic missiles. What are ballistic missiles? They're the kind that come crashing down from the sky. They go up really high into outer space and then drop straight down. A cruise missile is basically a high-tech drone. It flies close to the ground, weaving back and forth. But a ballistic missile, its final speed is extremely fast. So without the American THAAD system or Patriot system, you just can't stop them. So several ballistic missiles hit Ukraine, and one of them even landed in Poland, inside Polish territory, but fortunately there were no casualties. Then on Thursday, Russia launched another round of ballistic missile attacks. This attack resulted in 9 deaths, including in a rural village called Kryvyi Rih. All 6 members of one family were killed. So in recent months, Russia has been stepping up its use of ballistic missiles to try to break through Ukraine's air defense network. Kyiv now really has run out of Patriot missiles for intercepting these missiles. So Zelensky has been telling allies, you need to lend us your missiles first. That's the situation. At the same time, he asked President Trump whether they could directly manufacture them, and President Trump agreed. He agreed, but on Friday, President Trump said that negotiations about the production of Patriot missiles are still ongoing. We haven't given final approval to this proposal yet because we have to be very careful not to let others manufacture this thing. So even though he said that he had previously agreed at the NATO summit to give Ukraine the license. In short, the final decision is still being made. As for Russia's strikes on Ukraine, many of them have hit civilian infrastructure in residential areas. Ukraine is stepping up its counterattacks. Even though it can't completely stop the other side, it can still strike back, intensifying attacks on Russian territory. The main targets are Russia's oil facilities and warehouses. At the same time, President Trump is urging both Russia and Ukraine to make concessions, saying that's the only way to possibly end this years-long war. All right, the next piece of news is actually quite important, so let me tell you about it. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, recently launched a large-scale search operation in Southern California, and a Chinese media company has become the focus of the investigation. The search targeted the offices of elected officials, Chinese-owned media companies, and multiple residences and office locations. On the surface, this is an investigation into public corruption, but there is widespread attention on whether the FBI is actually looking into efforts by the Chinese Communist Party to establish influence in the United States. So who was searched? It was the office of Hagman, a county supervisor from the 5th District of San Bernardino County. Ontario City, now this Ontario is different from the one in Canada. This is Ontario in Southern California. The home of Ontario City Council member Wapner, as well as the Chinese-owned media company called Tsingtao Media, whose office is located in West Covina, and the home of its founder, Su Yantao, were also searched. So this time, the most prominent target of the search was this company called Tsingtao Media, which has also drawn attention from the public. Actually, I'm quite familiar with Tsingtao Media. It was founded by Su Yantao in 1990. He claims, in fact, that it's the largest Chinese-language multimedia company in the United States. When I say this, you all hear it, right? Does anyone here actually know this company? I bet no one knows it at all. So this company claims it's the biggest? What's going on with that? So over the past 10 or 20 years, he's been moving back and forth between China and the US, taking money from the Chinese Communist Party and doing things for them in America. He set up pro-CCP media outlets in the US, but they're all basically empty shells. No influence, no audience, no traffic, just a whole bunch of them that nobody pays attention to. To put it bluntly, it's just a way to scam money from the CCP. Honestly, the damage to the US is actually pretty limited. But even so, in the eyes of the FBI, he's still an agent of the CCP. He was definitely going to be watched by the FBI, and now it's clear that he is. So, what am I trying to say here? The reason I'm telling everyone about this is that Chinese people really need to keep their distance from the CCP now. You can't get close to them anymore. This is no longer the time to try to play both sides for your own benefit. The US and China are now in direct confrontation. Even if Trump still says Xi Jinping is my good friend, the US and China have definitely entered into open confrontation. So if any of you are still, well, actually, I know very few of my viewers would do this, but maybe you have friends who are, and you can pass this message along to them. Now, you need to have self-respect. Chinese people really need to have self-respect. Don't get yourself into trouble, and don't bring trouble to Chinese Americans as a whole. The solution's very simple. Keep your distance from the Chinese embassy and consulates. Don't get close to them, don't cooperate with them, don't have any dealings with them. If they invite you to some National Day gala, just don't go. Say you're busy, say you have a stomachache, whatever excuse works. Just stay away from them. This is how you keep yourself safe. Don't participate in their events, which means you won't bring trouble upon yourself, and ultimately you won't bring trouble to Chinese Americans in the US either. We don't want to give the US government the impression that we're a bunch of people who collude with the Chinese Communist Party, because that's really not who we are, right? Alright, let's see if our audience has any more questions. Are there any? Any super chats? Looks like there aren't any today. Okay, alright, no worries, no worries. I rarely talk about this kind of thing anyway. Yeah, right. Thank you, Stephen Wang, for tipping Fang Wei. Thank you for the support. Alright, great. Alright, let's see if any of our audience members have any questions. Yeah, Moran Nimi says, we really don't dare to go back. Our young people at home were planning to run the Beijing Marathon in October. In previous years, registration would start as early as June or July, especially since so many international participants join. But this year, there hasn't been any news at all. It's really unusual. Who knows what might happen in October? Right now, security on Chang'an Avenue has already gone into overdrive. Our whole family originally planned to go back and visit the elders while he ran the marathon, but we had to cancel and instead signed up for the full marathon in Seoul, South Korea at the beginning of November. Oh my God, seriously? As they say, to destroy someone, heaven first makes him mad. These strange phenomena suggest the CCP is failing, so everyone should hold on. Even if you're overseas, unless you have a special reason, you should avoid returning to China. Especially if you've spoken out about the CCP and you've been very, very frank about it. Mo Wang Yanjibo said, the CCP's paradox is that if you don't know about something, you'll endanger the country, but if you do know about it, just knowing itself is a threat to national security. Yeah, their logic is just ridiculous. Okay, Lao Pu Guizin says, thank you, Trump, for closing America's doors. Otherwise, we might have seen scenes like the ones in Spain. Thank you, great President Trump. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Oh, and also, someone named Nico Howe said, is today's show is it longer than usual? Feng Wei puts a lot of effort into every show, and even if I have to stay up late, I have to listen to the whole thing. I ordered 250 grams of black goji berries, and they're on the way. I hope they can help improve my diabetes. Alright, I really hope so. When you get them, please leave us a message and let us know. Okay, let's take another look. There are some questions from viewers below. They're really interesting. I want to put them up and take a look. Did you see them? No? If not, I'll read them all about it. Okay, how should I put it? Some of the questions from our viewers are really interesting. A viewer mentioned, talking about yesterday's border crossing, Spain. A viewer from Canada said, isn't it different in Canada? Illegal immigrants and refugees are like father and mother. When they come, the government pays for their food and housing, and if you want to send them away, you end up fighting yourself over it. What does that mean? It means the government has to spend money to fight legal battles for them. If the government wants to deport illegal immigrants, it still has to pay for their lawyers, so it's like the government is fighting itself in court. And during this whole process, these illegal immigrants even get work permits. For those of us who are legal immigrants, how unfair is that? Isn't it just ridiculous? If you want to deport them, fine, but you still have to pay for their legal battles, basically fighting yourself in court. It's like your left hand fighting your right hand. Alright, another viewer said, there are two types. Legal immigrants are grateful to the country they enter and work hard to integrate into the culture, while illegal intruders take everything for granted, exploiting welfare and assets. Is what he said correct? I don't think everyone is like that, but on a broader level, I think it makes sense. A lot of sense. Exactly. You go through so much. It's really not easy. You have to take exams, work hard, go through all those experiences, and pay so much money. And finally, you become a citizen of this country, right? Of course you cherish it, don't you? But if you just sneak in, what have you contributed? You haven't contributed anything, so how could you feel grateful? All right, so yesterday, a viewer said, hearing Fang Wei talk about the first night of the Founding of the Nation tour yesterday reminded me of the first night of last year's August 1st Founding of the Nation tour, when I met Fang Wei, Shin Ten, the Sikorsons, and the professor and his wife in the beautiful hotel conference room. This was in Boston. Feels like it was just recently. Thank you for organizing the Founding of the Nation tour. Thank you. This is a message from Kwong and Ming. Thank you. I also really miss those times. All right, a viewer said, those people, referring to the people in North Africa, are already looting local stores. They're talking about looting stores in Ceuta. Yes, everyone has seen it, right? Have you seen this? This thing? All right, the next viewer, Josie Liang, seems to know a lot about Spain. Let me read their comment. The ruling party in Spain lies about the country's aging population and labor shortage just to win immigrant votes, but actually it's the opposite. Over the years, the government has used amnesty as a pretext to take in many undesirable people from all over the world, letting them share in all kinds of benefits like free health care, hardship allowances, and more than a dozen types of subsidies. This has led to massive unemployment, laziness, and people just lying flat, generations not working, relying on government relief funds and free housing. Wow, really? Spanish politicians are really corrupt. There are constant scandals involving kickbacks from domestic and overseas investments. They always put personal interests first. The big kickback case involving pandemic masks still hasn't been resolved to this day. So Spain has become a hotbed and paradise for criminals. Despite strong opposition from the opposition party and citizens, the People's Party is now taking the Prime Minister to the EU. Since they can't sue him in their own country, they're going to the EU to file a complaint. Also, they keep granting amnesties, which leads to more and more illegal immigrants sneaking in. This puts a huge strain on the free healthcare system, drives down wages, and causes social chaos. Of course, Europe is unhappy about this. International human trafficking rings are all flocking to Spain, letting organized crime rake in huge profits. That really is bizarre. The Spanish police are basically hosting the illegal immigrants who sneak in, providing them with free food, clothing, and healthcare. This year, they originally planned to grant amnesty to 500,000 illegal immigrants who had already been in the country for a year, but by July 10th, they had already granted amnesty to 1.3 million. Yesterday, an international smuggling syndicate and international illegal organization entered Ceuta. Even though they've come ashore, parks, streets, and public spaces all over the peninsula have been taken over by them. Sleeping mats everywhere, people sleeping on the ground everywhere. National resources are running short in emergencies, and the occupying forces are rushing into big supermarkets and Chinese grocery stores to just take whatever they want. Most stores have already closed. It really feels like Russian troops storming into Crimea. Oh my God, what on earth is going on here? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. VA 1776 says, I just went to southern Spain last year and chatted with some local young people. They really envy the US for having President Trump. They're taxed as high as 40%. Oh, talking about young people? 40%. The illegal immigration policies make them complain non-stop. They provide housing and even free food for them, making life really tough for the local residents. Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That was from Via 1776. Thank you for sharing. All right, another viewer named Annie Shee said, now so many people in the US are pursuing DSA. If these people ever come to power, things could get even worse in the US than in Spain. It's really worrying. That's true. Another viewer, Baobao732, said, we must first take control of education. Schools need to root out DSA teachers, that is, teachers from the Democratic Socialists of America, because they are instilling crazy and wrong ideas into the next generation. Then, some of these people will become judges, turning the judiciary unjust as well. As adults with normal logic gradually grow old, the balance will slowly tip to the other side. It's really worrying. Yeah, that's right. Yami Shen, said, I'm in Spain and all the illegal immigration is thanks to the Prime Minister. It's hard for local Spaniards to find jobs and housing, and young people are fleeing to Northern Europe. You see, they're being forced to leave, so they have no choice but to escape. And then next, Lee Ryan said, one important step for the international left to destroy Western civilization is population replacement. These people are coming here to take over the country, and they themselves admit it. I pray that the American people will wake up and see what's really happening. And someone else said, here's the question. How did someone like Sanchez even get elected? If it was the Spanish people themselves who elected him, what the heck is that about? I'll talk about this next time. I'll talk about it next time. It's a good question. And then someone else said, from the perspective of my Native American ancestors, the British Mayflower landing in 1620 and the massive influx of Europeans who later invaded the Americas and seized resources was the same thing. They were just pursuing a better life. So what's the problem with that? Asians, including us, are now living on land that Europeans took by force, enjoying this new world. A lot of people do say that, but I don't agree with this view. You know, Native Americans never said that the Americas were their country or that they governed it. Back then, they were nomadic, following water and grass, and they didn't even have the concept of territory belonging to anyone. So there were no countries, no territories, no rules, nothing at all. But after coming to America, after the so-called development of the New World, the United States of America was established. Even before that, in the original 13 colonies, there were already clear land rules, management regulations, borders, and so on. Once all of these were in place, if you broke the law, you were violating established rules. That's a problem. That's just not right. You just said that when Europeans came to the Americas, it was like they were seizing resources. The same logic applies. You can't put it that way. That land, the people in the Americas originally just lived wherever they wanted, and Europeans did the same. It was no different. Of course, later on, Europeans became more dominant, so they established their own territorial rules, whereas the indigenous people didn't have such rules. Well, that's just what happened later on. As for us Asians coming here, we're all legal immigrants, most of us, right? I'm a completely legal immigrant. We play by the rules. That's how society stays orderly. You can't say that we're the same as people crossing the border illegally, that illegal immigrants are the same as legal immigrants. They're all immigrants, so what's the difference? That's absolutely wrong. Because it's about whether or not you respect and uphold the rules that maintain social order. So liberty, real liberty, is freedom with rules. That's what liberty means, right? People used to say, that the Chinese Communist Party steals American intellectual property and all that. But back when the US was becoming powerful, it also stole a lot of intellectual property from Britain. That's because there were no intellectual property laws back then. There were no rules, so nobody blamed you, and you weren't really violating anything. But later on, people realized that this kind of behavior wasn't acceptable. It would harm the rights of creators and affect economic prosperity. That's when countries started to establish copyright laws, one after another. In this situation, if you say, well, you used to steal, so I can keep stealing too, and breaking the law doesn't matter, do you really think that makes sense? You just can't look at it that way. Once you have rules, there's the question of whether you should respect and follow them. You can't just throw them all away. Isn't that just common sense? Alright, well, that's just my opinion. You're welcome to share a different point of view. It's totally fine. Feel free to leave a comment, okay? Go ahead and share your different opinions. Alright, let me see if there's anything else for today. Does anyone else have anything they want to say? In a bit, I'll be driving to join the Journey to Founding the Nation. I'll be spending the next 2 days with the Journey to Founding the Nation team. Okay, Crystal Chen says, all my life plans are in the US, but my only concern is that I still have family back in China. Can I ask about Feng Wei's background? Your experiences? Is it true that after you started working in media, you never went back to China? Did you bring all your family over here? I'm not sure. I don't know if there's still such a risk if I go back to China after becoming a US citizen. Yeah, that's right. I came to the US in 1990, and I went back to China once in 1995. Since then, I've never gone back. I can't go back to China. If I did, I'd get arrested. Oh, it's not just because I work in media now. Back then, it was because I practiced Falun Gong. In China, practicing Falun Gong is considered a crime, just like if practicing Tai Chi were a crime. That's the reality in China. So later on, my whole family came out as well. Yes, my family all went abroad to study, and my parents are also overseas. So lucky for me, I don't have that problem now. But I still can't go back. Yeah, of course. I really hope to go back. I love China very much. This is the place that raised me. So I hope that one day I can return to a China without the Communist Party. I believe this is the wish of the vast majority of Chinese people. Yeah, for everyone, having loved ones back home to worry about, this is really the problem we're all facing. Something that should be a basic human right has now become something risky. Do you think people blame themselves for that? You can't look at it that way. You have to blame the root of the problem. Why does the Chinese Communist Party still need to exist? That's my take on it. Alright, okay, thank you all. And thank you for tuning in to Feng Wei's show over the weekend. As for tomorrow night, I might be out and about, so there might not be a show tomorrow. Maybe there will be one in the morning. Anyway, all right, so if there isn't a show on Sunday, it's because I'm on my founding of the nation journey. All right, thank you all for listening and watching. I wish you a pleasant weekend. Before I go, just a quick reminder, you can give the herbal plaster a try. There's a link below after the show, so why not give it a shot, okay? Okay, that's it then. Bye-bye.